Morning. We're pleased to welcome Gavin Dykes, Education Impact Fellow from the UK, who has a long-standing experience of innovation practices in education. Gavin, I would like to ask you three questions, and let's start with the first one. I would like to hear from you what you see are the main benefits of the use of ICT in education.
I think technology has a lot of potential benefits, but the first thing is that technology needs to be used wisely in education. It's not about using it at every possible occasion, it's about choosing when you use it in order to support learning. So that teachers and pupils should make judgments and good judgments about when they should use technology and then which technologies they should use. It can make great contributions to, I think, increasingly important facets of people's education in digital literacy, digital competence, access to information, contribution to general knowledge base, students' own improvement of their own learning and taking their own responsibility for that, and in the changes of relationship within education. The traditional model of education where a teacher is the person who has all the knowledge and gives that out slowly to the learners is today an old-fashioned model. With technology particularly, the opportunity for learners to develop their own responsibility, to take that responsibility for their own learning and to work in partnership with the teacher to develop their understanding is, I think, increasingly important.
Thank you. Gavin, how do you see ICT improving the quality of education?
I think ICT can certainly improve the quality of education, but like many things, simply having ICT is not enough. My view of ICT is that it magnifies the practice that goes on in education. So if you have excellent practice, then that will be magnified and you will get tremendous results from the use of technology and its wise use. However, if you have poor education, ICT has the ability to magnify the poor part of education. So it is important fundamentally to get education right, to get learning right in the first place, and then to, through the application of technology, to amplify that. Now that amplification of quality can come in a number of different ways. For example, keeping track of what is happening with different groups of students and keeping better track of that enables some of the repetition that typically happens in education to be removed. Taking the very best of your teachers in whichever country you may be working and spreading their reach through technology by perhaps capturing through recording some of the work that they do, by sharing the good practices that they have with other teachers and therefore improving the quality of teachers overall in your system, are just a couple of examples of the way in which technology can help.
Gavin, you have been involved in education and innovation practice for many years. What are the key innovations in the use of ICT in education that you foresee for the coming years?
I think there are many of those, and of course technology is changing all the time, so the different opportunities that it provides are growing as we speak. It's probably worth thinking about this in the different areas that teaching and learning take place. So if we take, for example, teaching and learning in a classroom, the type of thing that I've seen which I think is fundamentally changes and improves education. A very simple example is where I've seen learners of 9 or 10 years old recreating a play using clay models. And there's one of those students acting as director of the play, another acting as the person in charge of the camera. They're taking time-lapse photography, linking that to the computer, then replaying that play. What happens in that is not simply the production of something using technology. What happens is that these young students were discussing the feelings of the people who were actors in the play. And so they were getting behind that play and understanding it and replaying it in their terms. So In my day, sadly, I recall sitting in classes and reading plays. We sat rather stiffly and read the plays, taking parts ourselves, without any, and some including police cars, without any real increased understanding. But that recreation of the play using technology and that discussion of it and the children taking control of that was something that increased their learning, I think, hugely and benefits them enormously. And that's a very simple and well-used innovation in teaching and learning. If we talk about curriculum more generally, an example from the United States and from High Tech High, a very well-known charter school in San Diego, Larry Rosenstock, who was the founder of that school, told me recently about a challenge that he poses to some older students, which is to create a documentary about a city that was a city in 1492, the date that Columbus was said to have discovered the United States, and a city that is still a city today. So that takes us to a completely new place. If you think of a city that was a city in 1492 and is a city today, that involves geography, economics, politics, all sorts of study, history, everything else. Now, the fact that they're building that into a documentary also involves communication. So that pulling together of all sorts of different facets of the curriculum into one big challenge, I think is an enormously engaging piece of work in which the students become very involved, where the quality of the work that they produce is exceptional. And they celebrate it by having an open evening to which the parents are invited and support to come and not view each of the documentaries, but to choose which of the documentaries they want to view, and you can kind of book it like a cinema ticket and enjoy various documentaries. So it's a piece of learning that is great because of what the students put into it, but it's also it's developed through a highly engaging question. And I've almost described that without mentioning technology at all. But of course, the technology, without the technology that puts the documentary together, and without being able to put that documentary up on a platform so it can be viewed, it wouldn't all work. So technology plays a very important part in that different way of approaching the curriculum. If I go to a third element, we've done teaching and learning, we've done curriculum. A third element is assessment, and assessment is clearly very important in teaching and learning and tracking the success, one hopes, of students, but also measuring that success. If I look at what I think has been one of the most critical innovations in that area in recent years, it is in the Ministry of Education in Denmark, where in June last year, the senior secondary students had access to the internet during their high-stakes exams. If we think for a moment what that means, if you have access to the internet during your exam, what questions as a teacher will you ask? Is it the same questions that you would have asked in the past? Because if it's a simple giving of a fact or the memorization of a fact, that won't work. What it has to be is to be a question that causes the student to find information, to validate that information, to construct a cogent and compelling argument to justify their answer, and to do all the things that I think we tend to call 21st century skills. So it's bringing together really high-level skills to respond to a question. And technology and access to information in a completely new way allows us to do that. So I think there are some very exciting things in terms of assessment. I think when it comes to a fourth and a final element of teaching and learning, the relationship between teachers and learners, I think, is one of the most important things. In fact, in the innovation unit in England, which I was a part of, the research that we carried out in the next practice project suggested that the key element in teaching and learning is the relationship between teachers and learners. what technology does for us is allow a completely new relationship between teachers and learners, because in many ways I think many teachers would accept that they are not the experts in the use of technology. So what we move to is actually a situation where teaching and learning is co-produced, co-designed and co-constructed between teachers and learners. There is a more even relationship which allows learners to take greater responsibility in the overall process. And I think when people take on that greater responsibility, they give more of themselves, and I think we get better results.